Dreadlock mold, I want to know what your thoughts are and what your opinions on this substance is in dreadlocks, and if you've ever experienced it yourself, and what determines between mold and buildup. I would love to hear your opinions in the comments down below. This video is actually brought to us by the Ridge wallet. This is their 8th anniversary, and the Ridge was launched on Kickstarter by father-son team Daniel and Paul Kane. They're celebrating the 8th anniversary for the successful funding and launch of ridgewallet.com. This is the Ridge wallet here, looking fantastic. It's a minimalistic EDC everyday carry, and they are actually a vegan wallet. They've now sold over 1 million wallets, and they're doing at least 15% off the whole store like it's Black Friday, but in March. Essentially very light, very durable. This is the matte black edition, and what you do is you actually put your cards in here. So you carry your essential cards only, and all your money is stored on the money clip here. They have laser engraved steel, as you can see with the logo on here. I would recommend looking into the Ridge wallet if you haven't yet. This is very minimalistic style. It's definitely better than carrying around a chunk of dead animal skin in your pocket, so highly durable. Yo, Wagwan, it's that guy. It's knotlocks, not nation. How's everybody doing? Good to see you guys here on the channel. I wanted to do a video today about dreadlock mold. I guess touch on the topic because, for one, it's an issue that I've had in my locks, at least as far as I think it was mold. But when it comes down to it, dreadlock mold is actually pretty common, but can also be confused with other buildup in your locks. What's going on? It's that guy, Knotlocks Not Nation. In today's video, in the dreadlock community, we're going to talk about the unadulterated mold, the arch nemesis of the dreadlock itself. And when we think about mold, we generally think about what we see growing on food when it becomes expired, when it becomes to rot. I feel like dreadlock mold isn't necessarily the same type of mold that is there because our hair is rotting, but it's there because it's given the environment for it to grow. Now, what causes mold to grow in locks? As you can see, it's typically caused by buildup inside the locks mixed with moisture that doesn't get drained out properly over time. What can happen is, let's say someone's put beeswax inside their locks, and then they start washing their hair and the water doesn't come out because beeswax will retain water moisture, and then it sits in there and it will start to crust up. So here we can actually see in this photo, we can actually see the white part is kind of like the buildup. Now this white part could be shampoo, conditioner, it could be sebum, oils from the scalp. It could also be just scalp itself, like dander that's built up in the locks. Black spots here, I feel like is where the water would have hit it and it started to rot that specific product buildup that is there. So you can only imagine having this sort of buildup in your locks. It's a little unsettling having to see this inside of a lock. I feel like this is a very extreme case, to be honest, but I've seen like mold in different types. Now this is my photo about dreadlock mold. I obviously photoshopped this one to be a little bit more green, but there was like buildup in the lock, which I'm not sure if it was actually mold or not. So let's see if I go to this video what the comments say. I thought this was mold in my locks, okay, when I had saw it, and it was like kind of a fluffy sort of buildup, but it wasn't green, it wasn't chunky like that last photo that we had just saw. Comments saying though in my section here, I'm pretty sure that's not mold. It looks like residue from palm rolling or just lint buildup. It says I'm with you, that's not mold, it's buildup or lint. dandruff booger. So in my case here, it was more like a fluff that I had found in my locks. And this is one way to actually get rid of this fluff or mold if you find it, is by dissecting the dreadlock, literally rubbing it out with a microfiber towel, some apple cider vinegar in a spray bottle. You can create your own little solution to help disinfect it, and then crocheting the dreadlock back together tends to be the best way to get rid of mildew and mold in the locks. I think I actually did that in this, whereas you can see the buildup that came into my lock more in the tips. Now I still find that I have some of this buildup in my locks to this day, but it's never smelly, it's never green. You can see here how I started to close the lock back up with my crochet hook. This being one of the ways that I find is most effective way of getting rid of locks, mold or buildup in locks. On top of this procedure, you can add the apple cider vinegar rinses in like hot water to help break down the substance before wanting to wipe it out. It's really hard to get this sort of stuff out without having to open up the lock. See, like this guy here's got some buildup in his locks as well. It looks like it's more of a cake than anything. One thing I notice is like having dreadlocks, if you ever start sweating a lot on your scalp and you kind of itch the scalp, you'll notice that the dreadlock buildup will come off onto your fingernails. That's sebum, right? And I feel like that is essentially the biggest and first thing that will build up in your locks. When finding something in your hair that's resembling mold, it's most likely going to be sebum buildup is what I'm noticing. The best way to not get it into your locks is, I guess, keep your scalp a lot sooner than that sebum can build up on your scalp, because when it builds up and then it gets wet from sweating and then it dries up again and then your hair grows, it's trapping it inside of the root structure of your locks. It's best to avoid that. And then if it dries up in our locks, this is when I'm guessing it becomes this fluffy material. Here's a photo of some product buildup. Well, it's actually funny because on a quick, alright, so this is apparently the same. Now this looking a bit more yellow to me, and green, it looks like that same sort of sebum buildup around the root that's been grown out. Very much a lot of dandruff that's been caught in the locks. And now my question is, can dandruff caught in the locks or sebum caught in the locks turn into mold over time? Another photo of a similar scenario, like, you know, it's not quite mold, it's more of just dry scalp that's been caught up around the dreadlock itself. But I feel like over time, this remaining in the lock could start to grow a fungus on it. I mean, the possibility is very real, right? Here's another photo here. So it's actually kind of hard to tell. Maybe that buildup is just considered mold, because it's really hard to even see what a mold in a dreadlock looks like. But nobody really wants moldy dreads. So now when we look at the center of this dreadlock, we can see that there's buildup right down in the middle of the core here. And this would be very hard to get out via dissection. This buildup also seems to be from putting dreadlock wax in the hair and palm rolling it right down to the middle, right down to the core. This would have been the result of that problem here, and it's not a good look. So obviously avoid palm rolling with product like that. It's kind of too much. But this would be the closest thing that resembles mold to me since we found so far. But it's different though, right? Like if we look up mold in general, like this is how we typically resemble mold, right? This is what we are generally looking for when we see mold. And inside of a house, you know, it kind of grows in on the walls. Kind of grows in on the walls in black splotches. You know, green splotches. Like that's the type of mold that we're typically used to seeing, is something like this. But when it comes into the hair, it's not always looking the same. This is crazy. Wow. Mildew is a type of mold, a class of fungi. In appearance, it is a thin, dusty coating that grows on upholstery or other types of fabrics, occasionally walls. This is actually what mold looks like on underneath a weave. Now, this is kind of the most extreme case that we've seen opposed to any dread. And on this woman's hair, it's actually green. You can see it. And they cut the weave off of her head, and underneath the weave was green. That's a result of moisture being trapped underneath it. And that's essentially like having one big lock on her head with hair underneath it not being able to breathe. So that is the extreme case. I feel like as dreadheads we don't really get to that point so much, but maybe if you have a plica, that could be happening if you have a plica polonica. So like I feel like maybe on a guy like this, if this dread isn't getting air dried properly and we cut this open, there could be a buildup of mold in there. But from the outside of it, we can't really tell. You know, photos like this dreadlock here with a plica cut in half, it actually shows that there was no mold, barely any buildup even inside the half of this plica on the back of this person's head. So it's not like it's gonna grow in everybody's hair, but that's definitely one of the nastiest dreads that we've ever seen. You know, this is a nice set of plica here. Most people would think that hair like this has mold in it and is dirty. The truth is, like, we don't know, right? We don't know until you cut it in half. It seems to be the #1 photo that pops up when looking for dreadlock mold. So it seems like the fluff is actually mildew, but to what extent? Because again, this is a sebum buildup that's not fluffy, but this could still be moldy. And then we have this type that's the fluffy. So there's a difference actually. There's the sebum buildup and then there's this fluffy buildup. One is kind of grungy and smushy. This one is fluffy and light. Dense and smushy, fluffy and light. I feel like this resembles mold a bit more because it's fluffy, but it's not like dreadlock spores. You know, then there's this type of grungy, mushy sebum buildup that could be considered mold as well. Gunther shows some fluffy stuff in his locks as well. Let's see what he found.
Yeah, there's like a ball of lint. Here's another ball of lint, and you can just see it all over the place in this hairball. Now, one thing that I thought was interesting is that every single ball came out with like different stuff in it. What I'm saying is every dreadlock almost had a different like set of buildup in it, which is really interesting. Something I didn't expect. I thought.
So it seems like just dreadlocks catch buildup in general. It's kind of inevitable to have perfectly clean, built up free dreadlocks because dread rot is a thing, you know. But I feel like we can be on top of it. It does help having somebody take care of our hair and washing it for us and making sure it gets dried. But more importantly, it's about keeping your hair dry as much as possible. Seems to be the best route for tackling any sort of dreadlock mold. Dreadlock mold, I want to know what your thoughts are and what your opinions on this substance is in dreadlocks, and if you've ever experienced it yourself, and what determines between mold and buildup. I would love to hear your opinions in the comments down below. I'm gonna sign out. Not Nation out of here. Peace out, one love, so happy and natty. I'm gone.
The Nation.